Welcome back to Brick and Brand, a podcast at the intersection of retail and entrepreneurship. We're your co-hosts, Delaney and Brettley Roach. Today's guest has built one of the most unconventional careers that we've featured yet on the show. She went from practicing law with the Tampa Bay Lightning to becoming a serial entrepreneur. She's launched multiple hospitality brands, and now she's expanded into the luxury consumer product space. She has this incredible knack for taking bold ideas and turning them into very memorable brands. And today we're going to dive into the journey behind all of that. So without further ado, Danna, welcome to Brick and Brand.
Thank you, ladies. It's wonderful to be with you.
Yay.
So fun to have you here.
Brettley, isn't her hat insanely cute? I'm so jealous. It looks so good.
This is the Mercer, and it's probably the one that I wear the most, even though I'm in Florida and wearing wool in the summer is sometimes not the most ideal, but you got to make your own rules. But yeah, this shape here is the Mercer, which is my youngest son's middle name. And
cute.
Yeah,
okay, I need to write that down because I need to come out to Florida and have you help me.
We'll
find
get you
which
situated,
one. Yeah,
girl.
Get me situated.
It actually also comes in a straw version, so that would go well with weather. I know you guys are in some hot climates like I am.
Yeah. Oh, I
always see hats on people and they look so cute. And then when I put them on myself, I think this looks horrible. So I think it's just getting used to wearing it.
It is.
Right?
What you just said, Brettley, is one of the most common things that I hear. Everybody says, I love hats, ... like on other people. I feel like if I put them on, I look silly. And I'm always kind of on the flip side saying, no. Like it's all in your head. You know, like you just have to strut out into the world one day and then realize, okay, I'm a hat person now.
It's like a certain level of confidence. Yeah, you just got to own it. And everybody else loves it on you.
I think people put hats all into one category, but there's a big difference between wool and straw. And I kind of think how they feel, like the weight on your head. So straw feels a little more entry level sometimes. And then what I think is a good way for people to start wearing them is go a little bit lower on the crown height and on the brim length. So this one's a little bit kind of more, I don't want to say aggressive, but it's a little bit higher and longer. And there's ones that, lower that and shorten it. And it feels a little bit more approachable if you're not somebody who wears them on the like I do. So
I love that too.
Get you guys all set up and you'll be rocking.
That would be awesome. You'll be our stylist.
Please.
Yeah. No, this is so fun. We're so excited to have you on. I have to ask though, are you a hockey fan?
I am.
After your time,
well,
in
even
the
before,
franchise?
I'm from Canada, so I think it's truly bigger than religion there. I mean, you just grow up, knowing hockey, watching hockey, being surrounded by hockey. So that doesn't mean that everybody actually loves it there, but it's just really your level of exposure growing up in Canada is high, undoubtedly. For me, I actually just really always loved it. I played for a couple of years, not competitively, but played and just loved it. So when I went to law school, I very much knew I wanted to be in sports, and hockey was, alongside baseball right at the top of that list.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think many people know that Delaney and I grew up playing roller hockey, and we had a minor league ice hockey team in our hometown, Bakersfield, the Condors.
Yeah.
We didn't have much in our hometown. It was like cows and dairy farms and then our hockey team. So
this was a combination right there, ladies. I love it. Cows and hockey. Yeah.
Special place in my heart for hockey, but
roller hockey, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Brettley was good too. Brettley would play with all the boys. She was good. She was vicious.
I wouldn't say good. I was vicious, not good.
Hey, that's part of that's half the ingredient right there.
It's a rough sport. Yeah.
It is.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump in because there's so much to cover today. So as we touched on in the intro, you spent about 7 years as an associate general counsel of a major NHL franchise, and then you transitioned into entrepreneurship. And I think for most of us on paper, there's not a lot of crossover between those two fields. But tell us, what were some of the lessons? What were some of the ways of thinking that actually proved really valuable as you transitioned from legal work to becoming an operator and a founder?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the law teaches you at its core how to analyze problems. And entrepreneurship teaches you how to solve those problems when there inevitably is not enough time or information. And you just have to make a decision. And I think having the benefit of a legal experience, like a law degree, and then also practicing, it really does enable you to see the world through a different lens. I mean, just a perfect example is after your first semester of law school, you'll never walk into the grocery store the same way again, right? Without evaluating, oh, that's a potential slip and fall. Or you never walk into an airport without just seeing liability everywhere, right? So it's just kind of a different lens with which you look through the world. And so I think that carries over really, really well into business, into evaluating risk and realizing there is no perfect information generally, right? You're just not going to have the whole picture. At some point, you just have to try and connect the dots the best you can with what you have, take a deep breath and go. And I think sometimes attorneys have a reputation of not being very entrepreneurial because we live in a world where you're risk averse. You're the ones when you're in house with a company who's evaluating the risk for the other senior executives and saying, here's it laid out all on the table. The decision's ultimately yours, but now I've told you the risk. And it's always like you're kind of the Debbie Downer. And so that doesn't always lend itself well to entrepreneurship and what is needed to take that leap. But for me, it felt like that there was a ton of parallels. And I'm so grateful to have had the one before the other and to continue to have them overlap as they do for me today. So
I love that you took your legal expertise and let it empower you to be an entrepreneur with the lessons that you had learned. And because when you were talking, I was thinking, I feel like that's what it would do for me, is kind of make me risk averse and go, oh gosh, I don't know if maybe I don't want to jump into that. I've seen all these other companies go wrong and things happen and the worst case scenario so many times over and over. So I love that you let it empower you and let it make you even more knowledgeable and in becoming an entrepreneur rather than scare you or deter you from that. So I think that's really powerful.
Thank you. I think like anything, as we go through life, we accumulate, not to be too cheesy and cliche, right? But we accumulate these tools in our toolboxes. And for me, being an attorney is a really, really great tool to have in your toolbox as you approach the challenges of entrepreneurship, because I think it just really does allow you to evaluate something top to bottom. And while you have no idea what tomorrow holds, and it certainly doesn't give you the crystal ball to know how things are going to unfold, I think it gives you a little bit more of an ability, or at least for me, to feel confidently in making decision A, or, choice A rather, or choice B.
Yeah. Okay, I want to pivot a little bit into your restaurant businesses. One of your former hospitality brands is called the Steakhouse. And you mentioned to me that everything on your menu starts with a C. And I am so fascinated by that creativity. I think that is so cool. And I don't even know how you came up with a menu. I mean, how many things start with C, or how many food items start with C, but that is so creative and unique. Tell us a little about that. How did you come up with that idea, and how did it shape the rest of your brand as you were building this restaurant?
I think it's truly one of those kind of happy accidents type thing. I mean, foundationally, it started when I was in law school. I went to Chicago for kind of a competition, a conference, and stumbled upon this dessert concept that was so unique to me at the time, which was they did fondue, right? So chocolate fondue, some savory fondues, and all the kind of the fixins, as the Southerners would say, right, to dip into the respective ones. And it had champagne. It was kind of like a champagne meets dessert lounge. And I just fell in love with the idea and said, one day I'll find my own version of this. So fast forward several years, I just kept going back to this idea of cheesecake as my version of that dessert lounge. So one day I said to my husband, all right, I'm thinking cheesecake and champagne, that's a given. And then I threw in charcuterie just because I felt like I needed something savory, substantive to hold down the menu. And then I right away said cookies and cupcakes. Throughout law school, I was baking cupcakes and selling them, just taking them to school, taking them to the district attorney's office in LA when I was interning there. So in that moment, I paused. I said, I'd already established cheesecake and champagne and charcuterie and cookies and cupcakes. And all 5 of those things started with the letter C. And what's also important to note, ladies, is we were just leaving Georgia. My husband's family lives in Georgia. And so we had a, call it 6-hour ride back. And there weren't any kids in the car also. So, it was what's one to do, right? It was let's just talk. And so I don't know if the idea would have come to fruition the same way if we were just sitting at the dinner table or had the TV on or something. But because we had this long road trip, I kind of went with it. I said, what if everything starts with the letter C? And my husband looked at me and said, like in as supportive of a way as he possibly could, but yet having a reasonable response, like, I don't know if that's kind of like chopping you off at the legs a little bit. And I said, I don't know. And I just started shouting C things like cheeseburger, ceviche, caprese. And then I realized that like all these wine varietals start with the letter C. So in addition to champagne, like Cabernet, Chianti, Chablis, Côte d'Aron, Chenin, like they all just start with the letter C. And then there's cocktails, and there's craft beer, then there's Canadian beer. And it just kept going, ladies. And by the time we got back to Tampa, 5.5, 6 hours later, I had this laundry list of things in the notes section of my phone, and I was looking at it and just kind of never moved on past it. I just felt like it's viable, like you could do it.
Yeah.
Anything that you really want to get on the menu, there's a little cheat, like sometimes, like I don't know if you're familiar with poutine. It's a really kind of famous Canadian dish, so to speak, French fries and cheese curds and gravy. And so I wanted to have that on the menu. Obviously, poutine doesn't start with a C. And so I just called it Canadian fries. So there was some of that to the menu. But yeah, truly everything on the menu from the cocktails to the beer all started with the letter C. And it was just a fun little way, I think, to make my splash into the restaurant world, which is just so competitive. And there's so great options around in every city, and any metropolitan city, and Tampa surely is that way. So it started in a cheeky way, and then I just ran with it.
I love that though, because I feel like a lot of the times the best ideas just come from literally brainstorming and having a little bit more time than we normally do to let our ideas kind of flow. And all of a sudden something comes in your mind and you kind of know like this is cool. This is going to work, and it sticks with you. So what happened then? How soon after that car ride did you open the C House?
Really quickly. So within 3 weeks of that car ride, I had signed the lease and resigned from the Lightning, which
oh my gosh,
say it out loud, it honestly still kind of makes me pause and
wow.
Oh my. But yeah, I really became, I think the word obsessed probably feels applicable. And it's not as though I wasn't happy in my position. I'd grown up wanting to be an attorney. Since the age of 5, I just knew I was going to be a lawyer. Of course, I didn't know where and, where I was going to land and what that would look like. But I just knew I was going to be an attorney. So for me to have landed as a Canadian girl, working for a hockey team in a city with palm trees, it was dreamy. And I was challenged on a day-to-day basis. And I was in an organization that most would dream to be in. So it wasn't as though I was looking for an escape. I just really kind of felt that deep-rooted calling, so to speak, to create something that was and to put my name on something. And so, yeah, it was within 3 weeks of that car ride that
is crazy. I love that though.
And found the location. I mean, I went scouring the city and found what was ultimately the C House's location and began negotiations with the landlord. So yeah, within 3 weeks it was signed, and then I resigned. And I stayed on for several months with the Lightning and helped ultimately transition to my successor, which was really great. It didn't feel so abrupt, but that's the direct answer is 3 weeks.
I don't even, it's coming from a market like San Diego, I don't even know how you found space in 3 weeks, let alone negotiated, signed a lease. That's crazy how fast you went.
It is. And I think, I haven't talked about that timeline in a while. And so as I'm saying that to you now, I think, or I question rather, had I not found the space so quickly and had the idea had more time to further marinate, or that fear to seep in further, would I have ultimately done it, or would I have said, maybe I'll do a year or two practicing law? That I certainly can't answer. But I think because it did happen so quickly, that momentum just kept going. And then there was clearly no turning back. I mean, once you put ink to paper, right, with a commercial lease, it's go time. And so at that point, it was just that mindset of figure it out. And that's surely what continues to stay with me, right, is just figure it out.
And this was your first hospitality concept, your first retail storefront. And it was very successful, and you didn't have really any experience. So you had that mindset of just, I'm going to figure it out. What do you think it was about the C House that resonated with so many people and kept them coming back?
I think they felt that we just really, really cared about their experience, that I at kind of the top as the owner and down to our team, genuinely appreciated that they were choosing to spend their disposable dollars with us instead of all the places that they go to have a date night or to just take their kids for, a bite to eat after soccer practice or get engaged, which we had several whatever that life situation may be, that they chose us and that there was a choice in that. And I am proud to say that we never lost touch with that level of gratitude and appreciation, that when somebody comes through your doors and chooses to put their credit card down at your place of business, there's something to be said about that. And that comes with a deep responsibility. So I think part of that. And I also think that we really tried to just keep it simple and focus on the fundamentals, which are, I think, in the hospitality industry, really great food, really great beverages, really great service, and a really cool atmosphere, and just that level of warmth of, when they leave, they're can't wait for the next time they come back. Are we perfect with executing on all of those foundations every day? No, of course not. But I think we nailed it most of the time. And so I think that really developed a strong following in the community of folks who knew they could just come and, watch a baseball game on Saturday or host their baby shower with us the next day on a Sunday. And
very versatile in that regard.
Yeah, we really were. We were kind of that go-to for a lot. And that really is what warms my heart. When I look back, our lease expired just a couple of months ago. So it's still really fresh. It's not my day-to-day anymore, that particular concept. But when I look back at the Sea House, it really does make my heart smile about all of the life memories, both me personally, as far as my kids growing up, being behind the reins, so to speak, and then just all that we were a part of other people's family. So
yeah. I love that mindset. So given how successful the Sea House was, you shortly after transitioned into building a second restaurant called The Battery. Take us through that time. What were you thinking about? Let me do this again with a whole different concept. I mean, it's no small feat to have one restaurant, let alone two, that are fully different concepts and different locations. You have little ones or kids that you're raising at the same time. What was going through your mind? What led you to open a second restaurant?
Goodness, girl, I say too much wine one night, but no, all jokes aside, the Sea House and the Battery were in different parts of Tampa, and the Battery was, you ladies are real estate girls. It was just an entirely different real estate game to be thrust into the downtown core next to the arena where the Lightning play. To have kind of a more dense urban population that was there and was continuing to grow. It felt like a different layered challenge, and really that appealed to me. But to be really honest with you, a second restaurant wasn't my next move at the time. It really wasn't my priority. The hats, Pyper Malone, it was what I was planning next. And I had all the designs done, and that was really where I was going. It was just a matter of when. But as often happens in life, different circumstances present themselves. I had an opportunity during COVID. So this was in 2020, where the group that was slotted to go into the space that was ultimately the Battery had to back out. They just, from my understanding, couldn't secure financing, and it just kind of hit a roadblock for them. So I had an opportunity to go into the space, and it felt a little bit like a Cinderella deal as far as some of the build out that had already been done, having a relationship with the landlord down there and knowing that area, having been down there. And again, just embracing the challenge, like I said, of that different real estate game compared to the Sea House. So much like the Sea House, it happened pretty quickly. It was do you want it? Do you not want it? And then negotiations began. And then again, once that ink hits the paper, it's go time. So a year later, we were opening the doors there. And I knew it had to be a different concept. I guess I should say I knew it had to be. I knew that I really wanted it to be a different concept because they're really, despite being different kind of sides of town, Tampa's not so huge. I mean, you're still 10, 12 minutes away from the house. So it felt like I needed to present Tampa with something new. And I felt like it was a great opportunity to bring to the market down there a place that I and my husband like to frequent, which is, somewhere that has a really great wine list and a really great, bourbon selection, and something that, presents a little bit, I don't want to say higher end, but just could be a little bit more elegant than what the Sea House was very, very intentionally created to be, which was that casual swing in, swing out place.
So when you got called on this space, I'm just trying to put together the timeline. And you said, yes, I'm interested. Did you have your business plan or the idea, the concept for the Battery? Or did you say, I love the space. Let me go and create something, which is what I know a lot of successful hospitality people will do. So how did that work?
The latter, for sure. No, I didn't, because I wasn't planning another restaurant. I'd been approached multiple times from the steakhouse opened in 2018, and then I signed the lease in 2020 for the Battery. And during that time, it was really flattering to have been approached a couple of different times by different developers or landlords to say, hey, can we put a steakhouse like 20 minutes away from the current location or wherever it may be. And I just kept saying, thank you so much. Not ready, not ready, not ready. But that was, if I was going to do another restaurant, in the back of my mind, it was the steakhouse location. Okay. But again, when this property presented itself, it felt like, no, the space just commands something different. And so the idea of the Battery, the menu, it all happened really quickly as far as me jotting it down and running with it. But it happened after the space.
I see. Yeah. The fact that you were able to pull that off is very, I know I work with a lot of restaurants and it's very difficult to do that, especially given this was only your second. It's not like you'd had a lifetime in the hospitality business. So very impressive. One thing that we know, you have navigated some tough landlord relationships, as I think have a lot of tenants. What is some advice you would give to operators on what to look out for or maybe what to negotiate for in their lease before signing?
Great question. I think very naturally, when you are about to endeavor to open up a new business, right? The lease and everything, it almost just feels like a formality. You're just so focused on getting the doors open and all the other things that go into starting a business. I think my suggestion would be to really, really view the lease as foundational and something that not only is necessary to get the doors open, but something that's really needed in year 3 and year 5 and in year 7 when life and business surely looks a little differently than it did on day 1. And going into a lease negotiation, I think sometimes new business owners or folks that are starting a business feel overwhelmed by all that goes into it. And you don't want to think of the doomsday, right? You're going in with this heightened level of optimism and excitement, and you need that. There's no way to start a business if you don't have this deep-rooted belief that I'm going to be successful, or at least you ought not be taking the next steps, right? And so to think about, well, what happens if this happens? And what happens if that goes wrong? What happens if the landlord does this? And what happens if there's a pandemic? What happens if A, B, C, and D, right? Things that you can contemplate and not contemplate. Oftentimes it just feels uncomfortable. And you really have to get into the uncomfortable. You have to get into the nitty gritty. You have to think about as much as you can possibly imagine unfolding, good, bad, and ugly, and deal with it then and there so that hopefully it never gets bad and ugly. It's just, all right, what does the lease say? Let's cross-reference and let's let it unfold that way. But there's just so many critical components, as you ladies know, that determine the dynamic. And I guess I would say hope is not a good lease strategy, right? Like hoping that all works out. Of course, we all hope that it does, but we need to have a little bit more teeth to it. So evaluating things like, can I negotiate for exclusivity if I'm going into a retail plaza, for instance, and my business is, in my upcoming case, cheesecake, right? Do I want to think about what can I push for from an exclusivity standpoint? What about the term of the lease? While it seems crazy to talk about 30 years, as a tenant, the best that you could have are those options to renew. Whether you exercise them or ultimately don't, that, time will tell, but to be able to know that you have the flexibility to do that. What does parking look like? Unless you're in a city like New York, we're still very, very dependent on vehicles. And for your customers or your guests to show up, they are surely in a car. And so what does the parking dynamic look like? What happens if foot traffic changes because construction happens in the area? Those are all things that I think new business owners would be really well served to start to think about at the time that the lease is presented to them and not be afraid to ask for what you want. And ultimately, just like most things in life, you're not going to get all of what you want, especially if the leverage dynamic isn't really, really in your favor, but you can get some of those things on the list. And so I would say identify the ones that feel the most relevant or feel like they could be the most relevant in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and push for them hard. And of course, we all then cross our fingers and toes that it doesn't come into play. Right. But if it does, that's really, I think, where the long-term success of a business rests. Is the real estate is such a huge component. It's not just kind of the afterthought.
It's so important. I think that's such a good way of putting it, that as a new business owner, you do have to have that kind of burn the boats, just I'm going to make it no matter what
Yep.
mentality. And you don't want to open a new business thinking about all the worst case scenarios. But when you're signing a legal document, a 40, 50-page legal document that you have to commit to for the next 15 to 20 years, you do have to think about the worst case scenarios and what's going to happen in year 9 that I, hope to God doesn't happen, but I have to protect myself from that worst case scenario.
Yeah. And I would say not to be overwhelmed by it. I think if you're not somebody who's dealt with a lease, whether it's residential or commercial, it can be really overwhelming, especially when, as you know, most of these commercial leases are 40, 50, 60 pages, especially with the exhibits. So that is a prime example or a prime time to engage an attorney who does this on a day-to-day basis, who will represent your best interest. And you don't have to be Googling or going to AI and asking like, what does this mean? What should I be looking for? Yeah. I think that's a really good time to dedicate some startup funds towards engaging an attorney who is really experienced in that field, commercial, not somebody who's just your cousin who like does wills and estates, or somebody who, happens to have drafted a contract one time, right? But somebody who lives and breathes in the world that you ladies are in, but who is an attorney who can be that hired gun, so to speak, to represent your best interest. Because I think that foundation really is just that. It's so foundational to the success of the business, because at some point, the warm and fuzzies of opening the doors, that fades, and you just hope that you can have a really great long-term relationship with a landlord. But to the extent that circumstances change, that lease document's going to govern everything.
And landlords change, right? I mean, there's no guarantee that's your landlord forever. Did you use a broker on helping you negotiate at least the business terms of the lease?
I did.
Or was it direct?
Because the C House happened the way it did, it was literally me driving by, seeing a for lease sign. I just called the owner directly, and then him and I corresponded. And then with the Battery, it just unfolded kind of same way, that the space was there. They offered it to me. And so I negotiated directly with their broker, but I didn't engage anybody on my end. As far as the lease, I felt really comfortable reviewing and negotiating both, but I did, especially for the Battery, because I was dealing with a much more sophisticated landlord. I did engage a friend who's a commercial real estate attorney, just to put their eyes and ears all over the dynamic. And I'm grateful that I did that. For Leoma, we're not yet open and operating, but for that lease, I dealt with a broker who, again, was representing the landlord, and she was fantastic. It was such a great experience to do that. But again, it was just kind of me going at it solo in each of those 3 situations.
Wow. That's impressive.
Good for you.
Yeah, good for you. So you ran the C House and the Battery with no partners, by yourself, which is no small feat. I don't know how you did that. You're now building Leoma, your third hospitality brand. And as I understand it, you are bringing in 2 different partners to join you on that venture. Tell us a little bit about that dynamic, and what do you think you learned from not having any partners to now bringing in a couple of partners to this new business?
Great question. I think, like all things in life, there's pluses and minuses to everything, right? And it wasn't that I went into the C House saying, I'm not going to have any partners. It's just the way that it unfolded. It was a solo game. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to do the Battery that way as well, and to not have any investors and to just go it alone. And when the C House's lease expired in December of this past year, and I really was given an opportunity, I don't want to say forced to evaluate what to do next, but I was given the opportunity to say, okay, what do I want? What does the next chapter look like? I really decided to hone in on cheesecake and to kind of make that the star and make that the destination versus just kind of the star of the dessert menu, make it the actual go-to. And as the layers started to unfold with business plan and thinking about operations and what have I learned? What do I want to carry into this? What do I want to make sure that I don't replicate? And all of that, it just really became clear to me in my heart, just given the ages of my kids and how involved they are in their activities and how just life changes, right? Where I was, say, 9 years ago when I signed the lease for the C House to where I am today, it's just really different. I have now these young children running around that you want to be there for and you want to strike the balance. And so I just realized that when you're the only one, when the buck really stops with just you, there's a lot that goes into that you cannot delegate. You just, and you can have the best general manager in the world or the best chef or the best pastry chef or whomever it is on the operations side. But ultimately, if they're not an owner, they just don't have that same skin in the game. And you can't expect them to absorb A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So for me, it was really a matter of what I think would make the whole business and my life feel the most kind of, I don't want to say serendipitous, but the best kind of recipe for success. Felt like, let me bring in some folks who I know personally, who I think are really good humans, but who are also doing the same thing day to day. They are also in the industry. They have their systems down. They, have their I's dotted and their T's crossed, so to speak, as far as what goes into running an ice cream shop, a candy shop, a full service restaurant. And let's just link arms, because there are powers in numbers sometimes and in just the breadth of experience that others have. Because again, while I've been running those two restaurants and while they were both successful and I'm so grateful for what we accomplished, at the end of the day, I don't claim to know it all, right? In fact, I don't even know how much I do know, right? You just really, I feel a sense of excitement to bring somebody else in who's doing it, has been doing it, and is doing it in a way that aligns with my overall approach and philosophy. So I'm really excited to have two partners this time. And I'm excited to be able to just collaborate in a way that's different than when somebody's an employee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so wise to recognize when there's an area that you may not know everything about, which none of us can know everything about every business. And just having the humility to recognize, okay, this is a different time in my life, things change, and being able to adjust. I think there's something wonderful about partnerships, even though they can be difficult. There's almost like a level of pressure that's relieved knowing you have a partner, even if their role is different, knowing you can bounce ideas off them, that you can ask if there's an issue, you can collaborate. I know in our businesses, real estate and brick and brand, I have found partnerships just to be so helpful in conquering problems and approaching the business as a whole. So I love that. You touched on this a second ago, but tell us a little bit more about Leoma. Where are you at in opening the concept and where is it going to be?
So it's in an area of Tampa. There's an area called Armature Works in Tampa, and there's a new boutique development just up the street, really. And really, really exciting in that it is residential up top and then retail on the bottom. So we're going into what is phase one. And it's just a small space, just under 1,200 square feet, which, the battery was over 4,000 in the C house with the patio, and the interior was even bigger than that. So this just feels like a nice little, bite of all of that. And it feels really digestible. And again, it's just a matter of taking what was the C house, which was all of those great things, and just focusing on what really catapulted it all, which was the cheesecake. It was really been about the cheesecake and the champagne from the beginning. And so it's giving me an opportunity to just really, really hone in on what started it all. And I'm really excited to be able to do that. So we are right now just finalizing all of the architectural and engineering plans. So we hope to have by the end of this week, actually, all the engineering done. And then we'll submit to the city, as you know, and start that process as far as getting the permit approved and then the build out. So if all goes according to plan, again, big if. No, but if all goes according to plan, we should hopefully be around the start of November being able to open up the doors. And we'll do cheesecake in a really just old school, but I'd say elegant fashion. And then my two partners are in the ice cream business. And so we elected that we're going to bring in some ice cream, some really cheesecake flavors, and then a couple of classics. And then we'll have a full coffee operation as well, especially since we're in a residential neighborhood, residents living above us. So we'll really hope to put some smiles on some folks' faces in the morning with some really good coffee and matcha and all that good stuff. And but the cheesecake is just really, really exciting to me because it's one of those desserts I think is so beloved, but that there's an opportunity in the market to really, really put your stake into it. And, when you think cookies, you think Crumble or Mrs. Fields, and cupcakes, there's sprinkles and pretzels, Auntie Anne's, and there's Cinnabon as far as cinnamon rolls. And I think when you hear cheesecake, everybody's like, oh, I love cheesecake. And there's some great places in New York and there's some great places around the country and beyond, but there's not really that one go-to name.
I agree with that.
I agree.
I love cheesecake. Delaney, I see a trip to Tampa in our future.
Oh, for
We're going to go off the diet for a weekend and have all the sweets.
Yes.
I
And
love
we're
that.
doing small little portions also.
Even better.
But it feels like a good way to continue the Sea House's, that chapter, so to speak. When the lease was expiring, I just didn't feel the level of excitement that I feel like you need as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to just pick it up like a suitcase and find another location. It just really forced me to then evaluate, why am I not feeling excited about that? What is it about the situation that would excite me? And that's where Cheesecake really just kind of felt like that quiet voice that's been there all along, that, once I listened to that, it felt like that excitement and buzz that you need as an entrepreneur was, revived, so to speak.
Follow your passion, right? Follow the fire. That's always the best solution.
We will be shipping nationally also. So as much as I cannot wait to host you in Tampa, we can right out of the gates send it to San Diego and Dallas respectively. So
we can get it even sooner.
Pre-order.
So exciting. Yeah. Where's my founders membership?
That's it.
So exciting. Okay. Pivoting a little bit, Pyper Malone, which you are representing in your super cute hat.
Thank you.
Launched last year as a fully online luxury hat brand. Tell us a little bit about the inception of Pyper Malone. I know you said you wanted to start that earlier and then ended up kind of pursuing the restaurant business further. What did the last year teach you about the difference between, the hospitality industry versus the product business?
Great question. I think above all else, while the industries change, the principles don't, right? And the pillars of what I think make a successful business carry over from one industry to the other. So for me, as I look at doing hats, and not just hats, but a luxury hat, a hat that really, really prides itself on each individual component being sourced from premier manufacturing partners and assembled in the United States and blocked and molded and really, really scrutinized with a level of detail before it gets sent out that you don't necessarily get with something that isn't in that category. To me, when you're really doing something that is about luxury, it's not obviously about more or excess. It's about really, really paying attention to the details and somebody getting a hat and feeling that sense of immediate connection to, wow, somebody really cared before this was mailed to me. And I think that that's the same thing with hospitality, right? Is you could just slap a cheeseburger on a plate, and if somebody's hungry, hopefully they enjoy it. Or you can really think about, okay, I want a croissant bun for our cheeseburger because that just further amplifies the C versus just giving them some type of a brioche bun. But let's do a croissant bun and let's separate ourselves right there with just the bun. And let's think about a cheeky name for the cocktails. Instead of just calling something an old fashioned, let's call it circumstantial evidence, because that's a legal term and it feels like it ties it all in. And so I think it's just like all things, it's the details, and it's finding ways to communicate and show your love. That I think is the same in our personal lives and our friendships and our relationships. And I think it's the same in business when you have somebody spending money on something that you're putting out into the world. Is can you do it with a sense of care and a sense of love that hopefully, if all goes the way it's supposed to, is separating you from the others?
Yeah, the customers feel that, and it's those little touches that a lot of brands don't take the time to implement because maybe it does cost them more money, or maybe it slows down the process, or whatever it might be. But you taking the time to implement those, that absolutely comes across in the product. And so I love that. I love how you touched on the principles of different businesses are the same. I couldn't agree more with that. And so today, Pyper Malone is an online retail business only, but it does appear that you will be planning a retail storefront presence in the future. You're going to start in Florida, I presume. What are the other markets, and how is that retail rollout approach going to look for you?
I don't know yet, to be really honest with you.
That's
All
fair.
I know is that I can't wait to do it. It's just I really want to make sure, of course, that I do it the right way. So I think for a whole host of reasons, like you said, Florida makes the most sense. Tampa would be ideal as far as the logistics and the functionality of my life. But is that the first store? I don't know. Maybe it's going a little bit south. Maybe it's going a little north. I don't know yet. I think it really is going to be once it feels like, okay, now's the time to really get the wheels in motion, just get a feel for the space and get a feel for where we are. I hope to be able to do that in the next, 8 months or so, really start to say, okay, Leoma is open and we've got the first couple of months under our belt. I have partners now who could help me with the day-to-day, so it's not all sitting on my shoulders, and I have a moment to breathe and focus on Pyper Malone. But yes, I think first location is within an hour, ideally, or 2 of Tampa, so that I can be there and zip back and forth. And then from there, oh my goodness, I have a list of cities. What order they come in, I don't know.
Dallas.
I love it. That voice will be in my head as I fall asleep. I love it. But I think that, to be in New York City, of course, it is
the dream.
It's the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only because I love that city more than I can possibly put into words. I just feel like when you're there, you just can just twirl and all is well, and I
agree. We're obsessed with New York.
Yeah, we are. We agree 100%.
Every time I leave there, my heart is smiling. And that to me is a component that I feel goes hand in hand with all that retail challenges present. And obviously New York is a whole different beast and a whole different animal. Yeah. But it's like, if you can find your footprint in New York, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right? So
absolutely.
New York's definitely towards the top. And, Toronto is also, to be honest, for a lot of emotional reasons. That's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. My family is still there. I'd love to be able to have that homecoming, so to speak, with something that I've created. But really, as you ladies know, the market is always changing, and it really comes down to sometimes this particular space is the one. And so maybe that catapults that city to the top. So once I get to that point, you ladies are going to be my first call, and I'm going to say, what do you know? Who do you know?
We need Pyper Malone everywhere as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Pyper Malone is something you touched on, Bradley, a moment ago, is it really was like 10 years in the making before I launched, which when I say that out loud, it seems crazy. But I had the designs done 10 years before we actually opened up our website, and it took different chapters in its evolution before we even opened the doors to business, so to speak. And that's really cool. But what didn't change ever was that I really, really knew that I wanted a hat that was just really, really well made, and that was meant to last like for seasons and decades, and be an heirloom piece that, gets passed down to your daughter or your son, or that, when your sister comes to steal it after you've had it for 8 years, she's like, wow, this is an awesome hat. And so I really really, really committed to ensuring that each of the components are really well thought out, and that we have a way of giving the hat consumer, whether you wear it once in a while or every day like I do, something that when you look to it in your closet, you're like, yes, that was worth the money, and I'm so proud to be wearing it. So that's a big thing to accomplish. And going into this, I'm not a milliner. I don't have any milliners in my family. I just love hats, and I love what they kind of bring to your day-to-day. Like when you walk into a room wearing a hat, it just gives you an opportunity to have a little bit of a feeling, like a sense of distinguishing yourself. And for me, I just love the feeling of it on my head. And my goal is to have more and more people have that feeling, or they think about like, I'm going out to brunch with my friends, let me just throw a hat on, because it just changes your whole aesthetic.
Changes the game. Yeah.
Going to a concert, not necessarily anything country related, but just I'm going to see Michael Bublé or Bruno Mars or whomever. Let me throw on a hat because I immediately stand out in a crowd,
I love that.
Just really
the energy.
I cannot wait to be able to, be in a crowd like that and look around and just see Pyper Malones. And so I have a lot to do to get there, but it's great to have cheerleaders for the brand. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. We're front row cheering you on, girl. You're going to do amazing things. I feel like one overarching theme, at the risk of sounding a little cheesy, but one overarching theme I'm hearing with all of your different business ventures is the importance to you of when the consumer interacts with your brand, whether it's product, hospitality, restaurant, whatever it is, what they feel, the experience that they're having in the restaurant, the feelings that they're having when they're putting the hat on, and you're curating that, the entire experience and that feeling. That's such a powerful lesson to every business owner, entrepreneur out there, is how does my customer, my client, or my guest feel when they're interacting with my brand? And it's so clear how important that is to you from the moment they walk in to, when they're using the restroom in the steakhouse, and, all of it matters. So I love that.
It's so funny. To your point about the restrooms, I really did care about the restrooms.
Yeah.
We had little, they're not chalkboards, but what are those like pin boards where you have letters, like letter boards? Is that what they're called? Letter boards. And we'd have like just fun little like cheeky sayings on the walls about like cupcakes or just muffins who believed in miracles, or just having a good scent in the restroom and having a shelf that's well situated and, a garbage that isn't just the ugliest one you could find for $10, but something that actually feels like it fits the whole aesthetic. But yeah, I do. I think it goes down to the details. And to your point, Delaney, yes, I think it is that feeling of what we all seek in life, right? Which is that when we meet somebody that we walk away having said, wow, I look forward to the next time I can interact with that person. Ideally when you've walked away from a new encounter or a long-standing one where somebody just says, Danna, Delaney, Brettley made me feel like I matter. And I think from a business perspective, while it's difficult to do and it sometimes feels utopian to talk like that, I think ultimately if that can be your laser focus, hopefully you can hit it more than you miss it. So
absolutely. Incredible. Okay, so one question we like to end all of our episodes with, because we feel like it's such a good question, is looking back on the past 10 years, you've obviously done a lot of things, been super successful in different business ventures, and now you've got Pyper Malone and Leoma opening soon, both so exciting. What's something you might go back and tell your younger self before starting these businesses? What's some piece of advice you might give yourself if you could go back?
I think much like we as people are kind of built one block at a time, and one chapter leads to the next, one experience, whether it's good or not, helps lead to the next or helps you approach the next one in a hopefully more well-rounded way. I think business is the same. And so I would tell my younger self, just breathe and keep going. And much like I feel right now, just keep building, keep being curious, keep learning, keep trying to surround yourself with people who know more than you do and who aren't afraid to share their nuggets, and don't be afraid to share what you know with others. And I think that if we can be in a world where we're all more collaborative with each other and we view each other as assets and, versus always competition. And competition is a great thing. I mean, we live in a society where we need to embrace competition. But to get back to the core of your question, I would say to just embrace the baby steps and not to feel like everything has to happen at such an accelerated pace. And just breathe and keep going.
I love that advice for myself.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as an entrepreneur, you want everything to go super fast. You're working super hard. You're super invested. And no matter what you're accomplishing, you kind of feel like, why isn't it going faster? Why am I not over there? And it just takes time. And it's like, well, why not enjoy the process a little bit instead of always being so anxious to get to the next thing?
Yeah, I think so. It's natural for us to all want it to happen quickly. I would be lying to both of you right now and to your audience if I said I didn't wish that, for instance, I already had Pyper Malone in Bergdorf or in Neiman Marcus. But I realized that it's not easy to build a brand from nothing, especially a high-end one, especially one that has a little bit higher price point. You have to earn it. You have to take your lick, so to speak. You have to go through the manufacturing challenges. You have to realize, ooh, this was a misstep. Okay, let me pivot. But I think when you can, as a person and as a business owner, entrepreneur, mom, friend, all of it, when you can just focus on the pillars of what matter and just have faith that if you keep working hard and you keep making the right decision day after day after day, like for me, I think if I keep doing the right thing over and over and over, eventually that's going to lead to people trusting in what I've built, to trusting
100%.
That Pyper Malone commands their attention is the hat that should be in their closet, or that Leoma is where they should go after dinner instead of somewhere else, right? It's like doing it and keep being consistent and keep honoring what matters to you as far as the integrity and the quality and all of those good things, that hopefully it all comes together.
I love it.
I love it. Great advice. Well, Danna, thank you so much for being on the show today. You are an absolute icon. I'm so impressed by you. No, truly so impressed and inspired by your creativity, resilience, your passion, and everything that you're building. It's so impressive, and I just can't wait to see you do big things with Pyper Malone and Leoma and whatever your heart decides to do next. Yeah. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Danna,
thank you for sharing
you guys.
your story.
Lainey, those words were so kind. I appreciate that so much.
Seriously.
And I'm really so honored to have been able to be part of this with you guys. You're so much to be proud of. By the way, offline, we have to talk about roller hockey. Can't wait to hear some more of those.
Yes, we will collaborate on that.
So much for you ladies to be proud of. And I'm really, really honored to be able to be a part of this. So thanks for inviting me to join you today.